you are a Toronto Blue Jays fan right now, I need you to take a deep breath, maybe pour yourself a strong coffee, or honestly just a stiff drink, because what is happening to this franchise in the opening weeks of the 2026 season is the kind of stuff that keeps general managers awake at 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling wondering where it all went wrong. And before we dive into the absolute avalanche of news, updates, injuries, roster moves, and surgical procedures that have buried this team under a mountain of chaos before April is even half over, I need you to smash that like button, drop a comment down below telling me how you're feeling about your Blue Jays right now, and if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This is your daily home for everything Toronto Blue Jays, and trust me, on a day like today, you do not want to miss a single update. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. Now, when the 2026 season opened, the narrative around the Toronto Blue Jays was pure optimism. We're talking about the reigning American League champions. A team loaded with talent. A rotation so deep on paper that baseball analysts were tripping over themselves to crown it one of the best in the sport. People were talking World Series. People were talking dynasty. And now, just 10 games into the season, that rotation looks less like a fearsome pitching staff and more like a hospital ward. Because folks, the injury bug hasn't just bitten the Blue Jays. It has absolutely feasted on them. It has pulled up a chair, ordered dessert, and is living rent-free inside the Rogers Center medical room, and it shows absolutely zero signs of leaving anytime soon. Let's start with the headline that dropped like a bomb on Monday evening and had every Blue Jays fan immediately reaching for their heart medication. Max Scherzer, the 3-time Cy Young Award winner, the future Hall of Famer, the 41-year-old veteran who was supposed to be one of the stabilizing forces in this rotation, walked off the mound against the Los Angeles Dodgers after just 2 innings and 36 pitches. 2 innings. Against the Dodgers. In what was supposed to be the biggest, most electric game of the young season. The Blue Jays got pummeled 14-2 in what can only be described as an absolute embarrassment of a performance, and right in the middle of it all, their veteran ace walked off the field clutching his forearm like it owed him money. The diagnosis is right forearm tendinitis. Now, here is where I want to be careful and accurate with you, because the initial information floating around was that Scherzer may have been battling the flu, just like half the rest of the roster apparently is right now. And while that is technically still a factor in the overall mess this team is dealing with, the forearm tendinitis is the real issue. Manager John Schneider confirmed that Scherzer had actually been experiencing the tendinitis for a few days going into that Dodgers start, and here is the part that makes your stomach drop just a little bit. The Blue Jays knew about it going in. They sent him out there anyway, against the defending champions, knowing their veteran arm was already compromised, and he lasted 2 innings before it was over. Now, before you completely spiral into panic mode, there is a silver lining here. Schneider came out on Tuesday and said Scherzer felt good. He said the issue did not get any worse during the start, which means at the very least it didn't deteriorate on the mound. The plan is for Scherzer to throw his normal bullpen session on Friday, and barring any setbacks, he is tentatively lined up to start this weekend's series against the Minnesota Twins. So the expectation is that he makes his next start. That is the good news. But here is the problem, and if you have been following this team for more than 5 minutes, you already know exactly where my brain is going with this. Last year, the Blue Jays told us Scherzer's thumb was fine, and then it wasn't. Last year, we got the reassuring press conference language and then weeks of missed starts followed. I'm not saying this forearm tendinitis is the same thing. These are completely different injuries and I want to be clear about that. But when a 41-year-old pitcher walks off the mound 2 innings into a game with forearm issues, you would forgive Blue Jays fans for having flashbacks, because the track record of injury news coming out of this organization in 2026 has been nothing short of catastrophic. And speaking of catastrophic, let us talk about what has happened to this bullpen, because it has become an absolute circus. We are talking musical chairs with minor leaguers at this point. Austin Voth was designated for assignment. The Blue Jays called up Josh Fleming, who proceeded to get absolutely lit up. Joe Mantley has been struggling to find the strike zone like a man trying to thread a needle in a hurricane. Starters are not even making it deep into games. Eric Lauer had to leave a start early battling the flu that has apparently swept through the entire roster like a biological disaster. The whole team is sick. John Schneider made it official on Tuesday, publicly stating for the first time that essentially everyone on the Blue Jays is dealing with some version of this illness. So you have an injury crisis and a flu outbreak happening simultaneously in the same clubhouse. It is wild, folks. It is genuinely, historically wild. Now let's get to the update that might actually be the most gut-punch news of the entire week, and that is what is happening with catcher Alejandro Kirk. Kirk was placed on the 10-day injured list on April 4th after getting struck by a foul tip on his left thumb. The initial hope was that it would be a relatively short absence, maybe 3 to 6 weeks, which is already a significant chunk of time. But the situation got considerably worse on Tuesday, April 7th, when Kirk underwent surgery to have a screw inserted into his fractured left thumb. Folks, that changes things dramatically. We are no longer talking about 3 weeks. The current expectation following that surgical procedure is approximately 6 weeks of recovery, and anyone who has followed baseball long enough knows that post-surgery timelines have a funny way of stretching out. If everything goes perfectly, we might see Kirk back in mid-May. But if there is any complication, we could be staring at late May or beyond before the best catcher in this lineup gets back behind the plate. In the meantime, the Blue Jays are rolling with Tyler Heineman and rookie Brandon Valenzuela handling the catching duties. And to be fair to Valenzuela, early reports have been encouraging on the young receiver. He looks like a legitimate big league prospect, and this might actually be a valuable opportunity for his development. But let's be honest about the reality here. The lineup without Alejandro Kirk is noticeably worse. Kirk hit .282 last season with 15 home runs and earned his second All-Star selection. His bat in the middle of this lineup is not something you replace overnight. You look at what the Blue Jays were running out there in recent games, a bottom third of the order featuring Miles Straw hitting 7th, and you have to wonder how a team with this much talent on paper ends up looking this thin in practice. But wait, because we are not even close to done with the injury list. The Addison Barger situation has also taken a turn for the worse. Barger, who was already dealing with a left ankle sprain, was officially placed on the 10-day injured list on Tuesday. The Blue Jays had been hoping to avoid an IL stint, and for a brief moment it seemed like Barger might be trending in a positive enough direction to stay active. That is no longer the case. The Blue Jays have also called up Tyler Fitzgerald, who was acquired from the San Francisco Giants for cash considerations, and he is on the taxi squad ready to step in if needed. But Barger's bat in this lineup is another massive piece that is suddenly missing. When you factor in Anthony Santander, who started the season on the 60-day injured list following left shoulder labral surgery and is unlikely to return until potentially the very end of the season at the earliest, you start to understand why this offense has looked so pedestrian in stretches. The 9 guys they are running out there right now are simply not the 9 guys this roster was built around. And then there is the absolute gut-punch news surrounding Cody Ponce, who suffered a right knee ACL sprain on March 30th in literally his first big league appearance since 2021. He was carted off the field. Schneider confirmed on Tuesday that Ponce will undergo surgery to repair the torn right ACL, with a 6-month recovery timeline. 6 months. That is Ponce's entire 2026 season gone before it ever really started. You almost have to laugh at the sheer cruel absurdity of it. The man waited 5 years to get back to the big leagues, got his shot, went down essentially before his first start was even finished, and now he will spend the entire year rehabbing. Baseball can be genuinely brutal sometimes, and this Blue Jays season has been nothing but proof of that. Now, if you are still with me and have not thrown your phone across the room yet, let us pivot to the news that actually offers some genuine light at the end of this very long, very dark tunnel. Because the good news is real, and it matters enormously when it comes to the long-term picture for this team. Trey Yesavage, the highly touted pitching prospect who entered the season as one of the most exciting young arms in the entire organization, is trending in a genuinely positive direction. Yesavage has been dealing with a right shoulder impingement and was placed on the 15-day IL retroactively to March 22nd. But the latest update is excellent. He threw a bullpen session on Monday, checked out completely fine, and the Blue Jays have cleared him for his second rehab start with single-A Dunedin on Thursday, April 9th. The target is 4 innings and roughly 60 pitches, which represents a meaningful step up from his first rehab outing. John Schneider has been emphatic that Yesevich is trending in the right direction, and per the latest reports, there have been 0 red flags coming out of his throwing sessions. If things continue progressing this well, Yesevich could potentially be looking at a return to the big league club by late April, and when he arrives, he is going to bring with him one of the most electric arms on this entire roster. Then there is Jose Berrios, who has been dealing with a stress fracture in his right elbow, a diagnosis that initially sent shockwaves through the fanbase. But here too, the news has shifted in a positive direction. Over the weekend, Berrios faced live hitters for the first time since the injury was diagnosed in mid-March, and apparently it went well. The Blue Jays have another live batting practice session scheduled for Tuesday. If Berrios responds well to that, the next step would be a minor league rehab assignment, which would put him on a trajectory toward returning to the big league rotation. Given how badly this rotation needs healthy arms right now, Berrios coming back healthy and contributing as a starter would be absolutely enormous. Shane Bieber is also progressing. He threw a bullpen session, felt good, and has another session lined up for Tuesday. Jimmy Garcia is scheduled to throw a bullpen as well. These guys are all moving in the right direction. And in a development that provides immediate relief, the Blue Jays have recalled Patrick Corbin from Single-A Dunedin, where the veteran lefty made a strong impression in his one-start audition, allowing just 1 unearned run with 9 strikeouts over 5 innings. Corbin signed a 1-year deal with Toronto last week and is tentatively lined up to start Friday against the Twins. At 36 years old, Corbin is not the frontline starter he once was, but he provides a legitimate big league starting option at a moment when the Blue Jays desperately need exactly that kind of veteran body eating up innings. Add Addison Burge to the mix, who is reportedly progressing well but has an IL decision coming imminently, and there is genuine reason to believe that the waves of reinforcements are coming. The message being communicated from the organization and from John Schneider is consistent. The injuries are going to stop arriving in waves, and the returns are going to start arriving in waves. Yesevich first, then the wave of Berrios, Bieber, and Garcia, with Corbin holding things together in the immediate term. Hopefully Barger back within a couple of weeks. Kirk back by mid-May. And if Anthony Santander can defy the odds and return later this season, this roster can absolutely become what everyone believed it was capable of before the first pitch was ever thrown. But here is the uncomfortable reality that we cannot just paper over with optimistic injury updates. The Blue Jays are 4-6. They are off to their worst start in recent memory, and that run differential is ugly. The team ERA is ugly. The team OPS is ugly. And the schedule that they have navigated to get to 4-6 was not particularly brutal. This was supposed to be the stretch where the Blue Jays built some cushion, got their footing, and established themselves as the class of the American League East. Instead, they got pummeled by the Dodgers in their marquee home series opener, and they sit below 500 while half the roster is either in a hospital gown or sneezing in the dugout. The American League East is absolutely relentless, and every single game in April matters in a division where you can fall behind quickly and spend the rest of the summer trying to claw your way back into the conversation. Yes, the Yankees are struggling too. Yes, other teams in the division have had their own rocky starts. But treading water is not the same as winning, and the Blue Jays right now are barely keeping their heads above the surface. There have been voices within the fan base calling for the organization to be more aggressive. Whether that means making a trade for a starting pitcher, bringing in someone like Lucas Giolito who is reportedly available and who would directly address a clear roster need, or shaking up the roster to inject some life and energy into what has been a listless offensive performance through the early going. And then there is the growing case for Eloy Jimenez, who by multiple accounts has been absolutely destroying the ball down at AAA Buffalo, reportedly winning Minor League Player of the Week honors with his performance. There is a legitimate argument to be made that Jimenez should be in the big league lineup right now. If you want to send someone down, make a move, change the energy, Jimenez might just be the spark plug this offense desperately needs. Because right now, when you are running out a lineup where your catcher just had surgery and is out 6 weeks, when your best defensive players are sitting in the trainer's room, when your veteran ace is dealing with forearm problems and your bullpen is throwing out minor leaguers who cannot find the plate, something has to give. This is a franchise with World Series aspirations. The current version of the roster that is healthy enough to take the field simply is not reflecting that ambition, and everyone knows it. The bigger picture here, and what I think gets lost in the daily deluge of injury news, is that this team has an identity problem right now. They were built to be a powerhouse. They have the pieces to be a powerhouse. But when those pieces are scattered across injured lists from the Rogers Center to Single-A Dunedin, you are left with a patchwork roster asking career backup catchers and reclamation project starters to carry the load against the best teams in baseball. That is not a recipe for consistent winning. That is a recipe for exactly the kind of 4-6 start that has everyone pressing the panic button this week. The hope, and it is a genuine hope grounded in real updates and real positive progress, is that the cavalry is coming. This team, healthy and whole, is a legitimate contender. That is not wishful thinking. That is just the reality of the talent that is on this roster when everyone is available and firing on all cylinders. But they have to survive the short term first. They have to keep winning enough games to stay within striking distance. They have to stop the bleeding, get healthy, play some fundamental baseball, and remind themselves and the rest of the American League that the reigning AL champions do not go quietly in April. Eric Lauer said it himself just days ago, even while battling the flu. This upcoming series matters. Figure it out. Win baseball games. And he is right. The Blue Jays are too talented, the window is too wide open, and the season is too young to let a chaotic April become the defining story of 2026. But they are going to have to fight for it, stay disciplined, survive the injury wave, and come out the other side hungry and healthy. And when they do, when Yesevich is dealing in the Rogers Center, when Barrios and Bieber are back in that rotation, when Kirk is back behind the plate and Barger is back hitting in the middle of that lineup, when this thing finally comes together the way it was drawn up, it is going to be something to watch. And we will be right here covering every single step of the comeback story as it unfolds, every roster move, every rehab update, every win that gets this team back on track. That is going to wrap it up for today. If you made it all the way to the end, you are a real one and I appreciate you. Smash that like button if this video helped bring you up to speed on everything happening with your Blue Jays. Drop a comment below and tell me how you are feeling. Are you still a believer? Do you think the Jays need to make a trade right now? Do you want to see Eloy Jimenez called up? I want to hear from you. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is absolutely the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss